Today, I'm going to show you the exact productization framework that allowed me to double my AI automation agency revenue while also cutting my workload by 80%. This is a tested system that transforms custom and very time-intensive AI services into streamlined and much more scalable offerings that I like to think practically sell themselves. If you're new here, I'm Nick. I scaled my own AI and automation agency to $72K per month. And using this exact framework, I've also helped thousands of people in Maker School, my day-by-day AI automation agency accountability roadmap, transform their chaotic custom services into productized machines that generate consistent income without also requiring you scaling your attention. Without further ado, let's dive in. So productization may seem kind of intimidating, a lot of syllables, big scary word, but it's really not. All productization is it's basically where you transform a custom time-intensive AI service, like a custom CRM build or a custom lead gen system build, or hell, one of the million custom builds you guys have probably already done, into a standardized, repeatable offering by giving it clear deliverables, fixed pricing, and then a defined scope, okay? That is the definition that we're gonna be rolling with. I'm gonna show you exactly how to do it in a few moments. We're actually gonna take an example system and I'm gonna walk you through the whole process. Now, the fundamental shift in productization happens when you move from this, I'll build whatever automation you need, where you're basically like an AI automation service provider as like an identity, like that's almost your product, into, hey, here are 3 specific AI service packages with exact deliverables and timelines. And then if the customer needs changes or they want minor alterations to the system, what you do is you take that thing, that package, then you just make some minor adjustments to it. Okay, you don't actually start from scratch. What you do is instead of going from 0 to 100% every single time you start a system, no. We start at 80% and then we go to 100%. If you think about it, this is a distance of 20, this is a distance of 100, therefore our productized approach is about 5 times the leverage. So why do productization? It eliminates what I call the 3 silent killers in AI service. The first is scope creep, which is where clients continuously add requirements to a fixed price project. For those of you that don't know, there's kind of 2 major ways to price. There's hourly, where you charge based off of the hour time that it takes for you to do the work. And then the other is fixed price, where you basically just give them a price, usually guarantee project delivery within a time frame at that price. And then the client either pays you a deposit or to do some sort of milestone tranche system. But when you do a fixed price system, which is where all the money is, a big issue is scopes tend to creep. Customers want additional things added. Hey, do you mind adding this? Hey, do you mind adjusting this? Hey, I changed my mind about this. Could we redo this? Now, clients continuously adding requirements obviously means more work for you. And this is a major problem that a lot of people have that productization solves. Another big issue is variable delivery times. Like, let's be real, we are dealing with a technical service here, as untechnical or non-technical as I try to make it out to be. Obviously, AI and automation, these are technical things. And with technical things, you can't always be 100% sure that the custom service that you're going to deliver is going to work out the way you envision it. APIs aren't going to work. You'll have weird bugs and one-off errors. There are always just some sort of bumps in the road that you might not be anticipating. And finally, inconsistent pricing. Like, pricing is one of the biggest issues that I've come across in my time in AI and automation, as well as coaching and helping other people do it. There's a lot to be said about pricing, and I've talked about it for many, many hours on several other videos, which I'll make sure to link right around now. But to make a long story short, rather than having to price every single time you get a new deal, which is a fixed cost to you in terms of your time and energy that you have to do every single time you have an opportunity, productization just allows you to do it all automatically. So how do I think about productization? Productization is almost like automating automation. It's almost like meta automation, okay? It's automating automation as a service. And what you're doing is you're taking automation as a service and you're almost moving it down here to automation as a product instead. And when automation is a product, then you can do the same things that most people do with products. They scale them up, they optimize them, they iterate them, and then ultimately they make them better over time. So here's what not to do. Most AI service providers operate reactively. They take whatever requests come in and then they create custom solutions each time. That just means they're essentially rebuilding the same system repeatedly with minor variations. Instead, when you productize correctly, you will get to maintain the appearance of providing customized services, but you're actually going to deliver very standardized solutions because you're focusing on outcomes rather than the implementation. If that sounds like witchcraft to you, stay tuned. I'm going to explain it all in a second. So some personal tips just right off the bat: use client language in your package descriptions. Do not use technical jargon. Start by productizing your most commonly requested services first. Include specific metrics or outcomes clients will achieve. Then finally, bundle services that naturally complement each other. Let me give you an example of productization. A lot of people in automation or other industries sell lead gen services. And so this is where we'll start, okay? Throughout the rest of this video, we're going to be productizing this. And then this is where we're going to end. Instead of lead gen services, which is vague and variable pricing, and it leaves so much open to interpretation, instead what we're going to do is we're going to build a retainer service with full campaign setup, copywriting, around-the-clock management, and appointment setting that includes 10,000 high-quality leads scraped per month, one 45-minute weekly strategy session, daily Slack Q&A availability, and team training Monday to Friday, 12 till 2, then a monthly report on leads generated, meetings booked, outcomes, and actionables for $3,770 per month. This is sort of the dividing line between a service and a product. And when you sell a service provider mentality over here versus like a product creator mentality over here, when you transition from this to this, this is how you scale explosively. And this is what basically any major service business that does over maybe $20,000 or $30,000 a month has to do. Okay. And the reason why is because think about this. This is your return. Return just means like, I don't know, money or whatever. And then this is time. The service that you're selling right now, odds are if you're doing a custom service like most people are, and that's okay. I recommend doing a custom service if like you're just getting the ball rolling on AI and automation agency. If you're a total beginner, selling a custom service is really easy and it's fine to do for your first couple of gigs. Don't like let that stop you from getting started. Okay. Because that's the real issue here, like not getting started. But if you're selling a custom service, typically what ends up happening is you put in 1 unit of work here and you get 1 unit of return here. Then you put in another unit, another. And so what I'm trying to say is there's like a 1-to-1 relationship between the amount of time that you spend and then the return that you get. Now this is fine because, if the slope of this line is like really, really, really crazy like this, then that's all right. But here's what productization allows you to do. Instead of having to do this sort of super linear flow, what we can do instead, and I'm just going to put our productized solution here in blue. Oh, no, I'm going to put it in blue for Christ's sake. Okay, no, I guess I'm drawing my own line. What we do is we put time in initially to do the productization and we get very little return. And then what ends up happening? Well, right after we productize, our revenue, our return scales significantly better per unit time. And so initially, there's kind of going to be this difference here where just getting up and running with custom services is going to make more money than productizing. But very shortly, this might be, I don't know, like 2 weeks or something. Very shortly after, Productize is going to make way more money over the long term. And that gap is just going to continue to grow on and on and on as your agency gets bigger and bigger and better. So hopefully now I've sold you on why to productize. Let's now chat a little bit about how to actually go about doing the productization. Okay. This is more or less the process. You identify your most common service requests, you define the deliverables, you set fixed pricing tiers, and then you create a standardized process with scope boundaries before systematizing delivery. Once you're done with that, you basically have a money printer, assuming that obviously you can take care of the client acquisition side of things, which is very big. And this is what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the video. Okay. So let me share with you guys a quick story. Before I productized, and I productized pretty early, God bless, but my AI business was plagued by this custom trap where, I'd hunt and I was very good at it. I'd hunt for clients and I try and acquire clients, put a lot of effort towards it, and it was successful. But I found that, while my revenue would spike quickly, it would also then quickly level off because the distance between here to here was me getting a client. But then, basically between here to here, what was I doing? I was fulfilling that client. And so fulfillment ended up being the main bottleneck. Most people's lead gen, I solved lead gen, it ended up being fulfillment. And the reason why is because I was creating these bespoke solutions. Bespoke just means custom. Because of that, every time I take on a new job, the amount of work that I have to do is kind of non-standard. Sometimes it actually takes way longer. Other times it's way shorter. And because I was unstandardized, I spent about 70% of my time on non-revenue generating activities. This was a bunch of discovery calls, scope revisions, custom proposals that were basically educated guesses. And then client expectations were also constantly out of alignment because every project that I did with people was treated as a totally unique project. And then, there was obviously like a big revision cycle where I would do something and then they would have to Q&A it. And then, I would just go over and over and over and over and over again. What that meant is successful projects couldn't easily be replicated because every solution was super custom. That hurt my ability to leverage past work for future clients, which is a great benefit of productization. Then my margins were also unpredictable. Sometimes I made like 80% on a deal, and that's awesome. When you have 80% gross profit, hell yeah. But actually, I had a couple of situations where, the scope creeped so much and I was doing so much work that I actually lost money on deals. Okay. And that's not even taking into account the amount of money it took me to acquire them in the first place. So rather than swinging back and forth between this super crazy, upswing and then that super crazy downswing, I decided to productize. And so if you are in this situation, I recommend it. If you can't confidently state how long it's going to take to do something, you should productize. If you work weekends to complete projects, because sometimes they go over, not every weekend, but some weekends, you should productize. If pricing is basically guesswork for you, just throwing stuff at the wall, you should productize. And if you find yourself recreating similar solutions with minor variations, you should definitely productize. This is like the custom approach, which everybody is doing, where they receive an inquiry, create a custom proposal, negotiate the scope and price, begin development. Then there's scope changes. Usually there's some sort of scope creep. And then you just continuously go through the cycle over and over and over and over again until your hair turns much grayer than mine. So how do we solve this? Here is a productization framework for AI services. What I want to do is I want to take this lead gen idea that I shared with you guys initially. I do a lead gen, and I just want to convert it into that sort of productized package that we saw earlier. And, I'm doing this in kind of like a, hopefully you guys could tell the production value of this video is not super crazy. I'm doing this as sort of like a brainstormy way, because I think that there's actually like 5 or 6 different ways to productize your service. And I'm not going to make a video going over each, but I just wanted to narrate my thoughts out loud while I do this. Hopefully that'll give you guys some insight. Like, I don't just want to tell you stuff. I'd rather also show you, because I think that's just as instructive, if not more. So yeah, how do we actually do it? So we start by deconstructing your deliverables into specific tasks. What we do is we break the big promises. I'm going to generate leads for your business. I'm going to make you money into some sort of actionable component that can be systematically executed. This sounds scary, but let's run through it. Okay. Another thing I'll mention is we should approach this step by working backwards from each deliverable. We shouldn't actually work forwards. And then what we should do is we should identify discrete tasks alongside that. So let's actually run through what this looks like. If my, service over here is lead gen, what are the deliverables that come from lead gen? Now, to be clear here, a deliverable is something the client sees. It's something the client touches. It's something the client can interact with. Obviously, we're on the internet, so seeing and touching and feeling, these are sort of approximations of the truth, but there's something tangible, okay? Lead gen is pretty intangible, but you know what's tangible? Leads. Leads are tangible as hell. But what is a lead, really? Like, to a client, what is a lead? If you think about it from, the client perspective, when you generate a lead for a client, how are you notifying them of the lead? Let me give you some examples here. An email is the deliverable upon which your lead is packaged. So that's one example of a deliverable. Maybe every time that you generate a lead for your client, you send them a quick little email saying, hey, Pete, new lead generated. This person is super interested in your service. Here's a quick breakdown or description of whatever. That is actually, if you think about it, this is the service. This is the kind of like more deliverable version. And then this is like the hyper deliverable version, the thing we actually see and touch. What's another thing? Maybe like a Slack notification, right? A lot of people use Slack here. Maybe we use Microsoft Teams, Discord, whatever. This is just like some service. What else? This is like a meeting in your calendar. These are all like basically, how do we say, instantiations of the idea of you generating leads. And this is all, believe it or not, that the customer is going to judge you on. The customer isn't going to judge you based off your lead gen. They're going to judge you based off how many emails with new lead notifications they got in 60 days. They're going to judge you based off how many Slack notifications they got with new leads in 60 days. They're going to judge you based off the number of meetings in their calendar, and then subsequently, actually like the calls that they actually have with like physical real people. So this is what like the actual lead generation side of things includes, okay? And I guess there's one more thing that I'll mention over here. There's sort of like reporting. In addition, you also have things like the configuration of a workspace or something. Basically, you have some sort of like asset config. So what does asset config actually look like? Well, in order to do cold email, a lot of the time, you have to set up on a platform like Instantly. If you guys don't know what Instantly is, check out the affiliate link in my description. I will love you long time. Basically, this is a cold email service that allows you to spin up multiple mailboxes and get going with it. Okay, there's value to the client in having a nicely, beautifully configured Instantly workspace, because that's an asset that they can click through and then go into. Okay, how about something like a CRM? That stands for Customer Relationship Management System. This is, again, something that they see on the page that they go into. Okay, if you think about it from this, this one service, lead gen, has actually led to, more than a half dozen products here. We have emails, Slack notifications, meetings in a calendar. We have actual calls. We have reporting. We have CRM. We have an Instantly configuration. How about like, some sort of like meeting recorder? Okay, these are all just various assets that you can configure to add additional levels to your product. And so that's what we've done here. We've basically taken this service and we've converted it into actionable things that clients actually see, not just stuff that's important to us. And this is what you need to do if you want to convert your service into a product. So now once we have these, what we do is we go through all of the services, the lead gen services that we delivered to clients before. And if you're at the point where you're considering productizing, odds are you've probably done this for 2 or 3 clients. So you have some experience. Then what you do is you just go through each of these. And you'll notice is that 80% of the time from one client to the next, these are actually very similar. Well, now you have all of the things, all of the deliverables basically that you're forced to deliver from client to client. And then once you have this list, what you can do is you can just start creating assets that you can copy and paste from one client to another. This is sort of the templated aspect of productization. Okay. So this is sort of the end result here. And if we just, go top to bottom, let's just write this. We have an email notification. Then we had some sort of Slack notification. Then we had, I'm already forgetting this. We had a calendar event. These are all the deliverables that the client can see or touch. Then we have the actual calls, like aka the meetings. Then we have the reporting. I just say reporting here, but why don't we make it very, very concrete? Why don't we do like a Looker Studio report? That's just a database visualization service. Okay, why don't we do some sort of CRM? Why don't we make it really concrete? We'll go ClickUp setup. Maybe this is where we store the leads after we've notified them. Then we have instantly setup. And then on top of that, we also have some sort of like meeting recorder setup. These are all things that I actually include in my own lead gen service, by the way. That's why I'm rattling these all off. All right. Okay. So now what we have is we have the deliverables. And now what we do is we work backwards from there. So we start with the email notifs kind of at the end here. What we do is we work backwards. You say, hey, for the email notif, how do we actually set up a system that delivers an email notif? Well, if you think about it, in order to set up a system that delivers an email notif, you might have some sort of, make.com automation that you enter a lead outline into, and it creates some sort of nicely formatted email. For the Slack notifications, maybe you have some sort of make.com automation template. For the Cal event, maybe, you configure cal.com or whatever service to like format the Cal events. For the calls, where are they actually going to be having the calls? Where are they going to be having them? Let's say Zoom. Okay. How do you set up a Looker Studio dashboard? Well, if you think about it, you got to duplicate the template. All right. Well, the template's one thing. How do we get the template? Well, we have to build at least once, some sort of dashboard. Okay, how about ClickUp? Well, we have to duplicate the template as well. And then over here, we have to like build our CRM. How about instantly? Maybe we follow some SOP. SOP means standard operating procedures, just a list of steps, a checklist basically. And then maybe the same thing for the meeting setup. So what we've done now is we've taken the deliverables, which the client cares about, that we want to maximize the quality of, and we've turned them into tasks, which at the end of the day, we need to do in order to fulfill our end of the deliverables. Now, we haven't quantified any of this stuff, but obviously quantification is an important part of the process. All I'm trying to do here is just conceptually show you guys how to think about productization from an end to beginning approach. Once we have all of these things, what we do is we start creating reusable components for each of these. So common automation functions, well, what's an example of a common automation function? Some sort of automation template that immediately instantiates notifications in email and then Slack. Okay, that's a very good example of it. You can start adding your own formatting. And the cool thing is now it's like formatting that's company-wide. It's always the same thing. Your formatting looks really pretty. So every time you deliver a project, you can just make that formatting 1% better today. Or maybe you have some sort of report standardization or something like that. Well, your reports, the first time you deliver to a client, it's probably not going to be perfect, but then the next time you're going to make it a little bit better and they're going to make it a little bit better. So now your entire product is getting better over time. And the only way you can get something better is if you first standardize it. After that, you build some sort of testing protocol for all implementations. This is super simple. In reality, this is just like an SOP for, end-to-end testing of the automation before you're done implementing it. You develop some sort of transition templates for moving between service modules. Now, we don't just have to use ClickUp here. We could also, use monday.com or something like that. And so when you develop your core standard product, once again, you've standardized things, you can start adding extensions and package plugins and so on and so forth. So maybe this is hot swappable, which allows you to maybe apply not only to monday.com or ClickUp jobs, but also monday.com jobs. It allows you, when you're pitching people, to say CRM, hey, what kind of CRM are you using? When they say ClickUp, then you say one thing. When they say Monday, you say another thing. This is basically a systematized approach to an AI and automation agency. And, you don't need to do this stuff right away, for sure. Like, you're much better served just getting up and running and selling stuff. If you haven't gotten your first customer before implementing the steps in this video, definitely like get customer number one and then come back to this after. But if you can get in the habit of being systematic with your business, you'll be much, much better off. Okay, cool. So next up, now that we've done all that, now that we have that giant list, which I'm just going to copy over here for simplicity. Now the question is, okay, great. How about if we wanted to scale our agency? Because it's fine if you do this thing over and over and over again, but in reality, like, you're not building an agency for the most part just because you want to buy yourself a job. You're building yourself an agency because you want it to be immense leverage and you want it to like free up some of your time or something. So this is where you start getting into the mindset of not like the person doing the work, but the person that's managing and organizing the work. So after you have your giant list, what you have to do is you have to take all of these tasks over here and these ones as well, and you just have to group them by role. The idea is, at this point, we're now going to be handing off these tasks to somebody to fulfill for us. And that's kind of this next step. So we're going to focus on strategically grouping tasks by role or function. This is critical for efficiently allocating resources and also scaling without hiring an army of people that can only do one thing. What do I mean by this? Well, like, do you really want to hire a make.com automation template builder that only knows how to make email notifications? No, obviously not. You want to hire like a make.com person that can just do any of your notifications, right? Likewise, do you want to hire, I don't know, let's say hypothetically the service actually involves you managing the calls and like jumping on the calls and qualifying and I don't know, maybe setting or maybe even closing. Like, you're going to hire a salesperson for that, right? Why? Because this is just a logical grouping of all the activities that salespeople tend to be good at. A salesperson tends to be good at talking to people. People that are good at talking to people also tend to be good at convincing people. The skills are all correlated, I suppose. So what do we do then? We group things. Now, in my case, I was mixing a lot of technical and then creative tasks. And I wasn't just doing this at Left Click, by the way. I'm taking a lot of inspiration from the Productization at 1 Second Copy, which is my company before this. This caused a lot of context switching. It involved like massive productivity impacts and decreases. Well, what we ended up doing, I should say, my partner and I, is we grouped together common tasks. Instead of breaking things down by, let's say, like writer and editor or whatever, we had combined full stack writers. We found that full stack writers were significantly more economical for the most part for some types of content. Then we also found that having low cost of living country writers, like people from the Philippines or let's say Bangladesh, to do the rough drafting side along with AI allowed us to arbitrage that cost of living difference and then make multiples on selling that content to people in maybe more affluent regions. And then we hired people from more affluent regions to just do like a once over and sort of Q&A. So now we're not paying a person from a more affluent region for the entire project. What we're doing is we're paying a person from a more affluent region for like 5% of the project. Then we're paying people from very low cost of living countries 95% of the project. And we're having them use AI to do a lot of like the preliminary editing and stuff. This is all examples of process optimization. I did this in the writing company. Obviously, I did this in automation as well. But basically, I guess the point I'm making is like, let's say instead of all this, your service is ads. There is creative, which is the images, and then there's copy, which is the writing. Better to have people that are really good at creative do creative stuff. Better to have people that are really good at copy do copy stuff. This isn't always necessarily true. I've actually done this exact system for advertising where I had a combined creative and copywriter, but just wanting to let everybody know here that people just tend to be good at different specific things, right? Copywriters tend to be better at words, creative people tend to be better at designs and so on and so forth. Okay, cool. And yeah, I'm not saying you need to hire people here. I'm just trying to give you guys an example. Anyway, in a nutshell, what you're doing is you're establishing a production line approach with standardized handoffs. Like Henry Ford and the whole like assembly line thing? When I learned about this, if you guys haven't, just Google it. When I learned about Henry Ford and how him introducing the assembly line was like revolutionary in business, I like kind of scoffed as a kid. I was just like, really? That's the big discovery? An assembly line? Wow, so revolutionary, right? Jeez. I got to be honest, this stuff really is revolutionary. It is revolutionary to take the magic out of a process and then turn it into concrete, hard, step-by-step deliverable tasks. That is incredible. And the second that you start doing that, like Henry Ford did with this artistic vision of creating an automobile and turning it into something that's sequenced and standardized and repeatable, obviously he started printing freaking money hot off the press. So you can take advantage of that as well. Okay, now let's learn how to calculate costs. We've gone through this process starting from the generalized service that just had leads, and then we turned that into a more concrete list of deliverables aka things that the client is going to be playing with. We then turn that into a bunch of tasks, and then we considered grouping it based off of role. What we do now is we calculate the cost of our product. The reason why we calculate the cost of our product is because when you start with the cost of your product in mind, you basically get to make your margins whatever the hell you want. Like for instance, if I know that the cost of my product is $1,000 for me to make, what I can do is I could just sell that for $10,000 and then I could make 90% on gross. And that would be incredible. And that would be a highly scalable business. The question obviously is, can you get people to buy the product that you are internally spending $1,000 on, that they would have to spend $10,000 on? But I mean, like, have you guys ever bought a mattress before? I mean, mattresses are products, right? They're products that have certain things that go into them. But I mean, like a $1,500 mattress, like I just bought one for my new apartment, is realistically like $500-ish to prepare. That's like 66%, 70% margin on that mattress. What you're doing is you are, in essence, taking all of these tasks and you're figuring out what is the cost of goods or cost of services that need to go into that, so that later on you can charge those big ticket or, big sticker prices of $1,500 for a mattress. What I've actually done is I've created an example here for productizing a PR service. Okay. So I'll walk you guys through that example in a second. But anyway, before I productized, I was basically just guessing at my cost for every project, which led to wildly inconsistent profit margins. As I mentioned, sometimes I'd have 80% and then other times I'd have negative 20%. I tried to stay away from losing money, but sometimes in business you have to take a risk, and that involves you losing a little bit of money. Now for AI services specifically, the technical side consumed about 40% of the project time. My documentation, I had a special documentation procedure where I recorded a Loom video at the end of every deal. I walked people through how their system worked and stuff like that, and I found that they just really loved it. So I spent about a quarter of my time on that. I spent about 20% on client comms, and then quality assurance and stuff like that was about 15%. Now, the most valuable outcome was always my ability to confidently set profit margins based on actual data. And that's what I'm going to talk about here. Like my ability to set my profit margins and just say, hey, I'm going to make 90% on this deal is one of the reasons why I think I was able to grow 2 agencies as successfully as I have today. One of the reasons why profit's so good is because the second that you fix your margins, you can start knowing how much money you have to invest. I know it sounds kind of silly and it sounds kind of trite. Obviously, if you're making $10,000 a month at 90% margins, you're making $9,000. But you'd be very surprised at how many people that I ask on a day-to-day basis, hey, what are your margins over the last 30 days? And it just takes them like 15 minutes to answer. Ideally, you would know all this stuff right off the top of your head. And I knew my margins down to the percentage point. So I'd recommend that anybody that wants to do this sort of thing, do the same. Okay, anyway, so how do you actually productize, let's say, a PR service? So PR stands for public relations. Public relations people, in a nutshell, if you are unaware, basically take their clients and then they list them in popular magazines and in popular newsletters and journals. So if you were to take me and then I were to work with a PR person, maybe I'd say, hey, PR person, I'd love it if you could get me on Forbes or something like that, or maybe make me a Wikipedia article. The PR person's job is now to take that request and then turn that into, as you can expect, a bunch of deliverables, take those deliverables, turn those into tasks, take those tasks, turn those into roles, and then assign them to the relevant people in their company to go and actually do the thing. And how do they typically do it? Well, it's actually a lot simpler than you think. I used to own a quarter of a PR company. And in a nutshell, you just send a bunch of emails to people and you typically have a network of journalists that are at various things. And you say, hey, here's a really interesting guy, Nick. He's got cool hair and super handsome smile. I want to rank him on Wikipedia, can we do this? And if I'm interesting enough, then obviously they'll do it pretty easily. Okay, so now that you know how that is, let's actually go through the process of productizing this. So instead of just, hey, I'm going to offer you PR, what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a very quantifiable list of things that they're going to get. And then we're also going to turn it into a cost. We're going to get that cost, that's going to be internal, and then we're going to turn it around, fix a margin, and then make it our external cost. All of that sounds like jargon to you, don't worry. Let's say we start with the end result. How many earned media spots do we actually want to give clients per month? Let's say 5. Let's split it into some packages. There'll be 5, there'll be 15, maybe there'll be 25. So the very first thing we have to do is we have to identify the conversion rate on emails. So, as I mentioned, this is basically just a cold email campaign. So if it's a cold email campaign, what is the typical conversion rate? If I email 1,000 journalists, how many of them are actually going to respond with some sort of positive thing? Well, let's say 0.5% to be conservative. So if we want 5 media spots, what do we have to do? Well, we have to send 1,000 emails times 0.5% to get 5 spots. So logically, what follows is let's just calculate the cost. What do we need in order to email 1,000 journalists per month? Well, we need an email platform of some kind. We need a lead source of some kind. And we need a system to scrape them. So $100 plus $100 plus $100 is how much? $300 a month for software. Now, I should note that these are collective software costs. You don't always have to pay for new software costs for new clients. So I'm not going to include this in the end cost, but I just wanted to start chatting numbers here. There are a lot of software subscriptions that you can use to fulfill a service that you can just bundle on with a bunch of other people. And those ones are actually really good. Anyway, we're already spending $300 a month for software, but how about the actual tasks that are involved? Well, let's say you need somebody to set up a campaign, then you need somebody to write the campaign, then you need somebody to manage response to the campaign on an ongoing basis. So what's this role that I'm grouping them under? PR specialist. This is a real role. People actually do this on a daily basis. I employed many of them. How much time and money would it cost for a PR specialist to do this? Well, I searched up some publicly available data. It shows this role about $30 an hour. If it takes 5 hours to start building that list, that sort of initial section, that's $30 times 5 hours is $150. And then if it takes half an hour a day to manage the responses, 20 days per month, that's $30 an hour times 0.5, half an hour a day, times 20 days per month, $300. That means that our total cost to deliver on a fixed basis is $150 plus $300, $450 a month. Then we also have a $300 a month software cost. The reason I'm adding the software cost in brackets here is because the software cost is not variable, okay? One client means that we're going to pay $450 a month. 10 clients means we're going to pay $4,500 a month. But notice how the software cost is the same in both cases. Hypothetically, I guess it depends on what service you're using. The point I'm making is this one's variable, this one scales, and then this one is flat. This one's just always the same. Okay. Anyway, let's now say I fix my desired profit margins at 80%. I want to make 80% on deals because I think 80% is healthy, and I like the idea of making 80% on all of the money. So mathematically, what is that? That's 450 divided by 1 minus 0.8. That's the math. So this is 0.2. And 450 divided by 0.2 is basically just 450 times 5, which is equal to 2,250 a month. What does that mean? We have now basically mathematically priced. We're not just pulling numbers out of our ass anymore. We're not just doing our perception of value-based pricing. We're actually mathematically pricing our product. And now, this is $2,250 a month for, your 5 package. What you can do is you could do 2.25K for 5 spots. You're going to have 80% there. And then what do you do for 15 spots? Well, you just multiply the internal cost by 3 approximately, right? So you know that this internal cost of $450 a month is going to be $1,350 a month. $1,350 a month times 5 is $6,750 a month. So, I guess we just multiply that by 3 now I'm thinking about it. So now you get into the part where, you charge 6.75K for 15 spots. And now maybe you can do something like, now that you've, built out this table, you can offer some sort of 10% discount for people that go to the 15 spot as opposed to just the 5. And you can actually make this a little bit more cost effective. Now it's 605K, right? And now you're kind of upselling this. You're saying, hey, this is actually more cost efficient. If all you care about is how many spots you get per dollar or how many dollars you get per spots or whatever the heck, this is the more optimal one for you. All right. Hopefully I'm running you guys through what the process looks like in order to calculate costs. But at the end of it, now what you have is you have a list of packages and deals. So let's run through this really quickly with that other example that I provided you guys earlier, the one about lead gen. So if you think about it, this lead gen service that was before, where every time you get a new client, it's like, how much is this going to cost? It's going to cost $1,500. I don't know. It's going to cost $2,200, right? Ooh, it depends on the value. It's going to cost $3,900. This is stuff that is fine if you're a beginner, but if you want to move past the beginner stage, you need to learn how to productize your service. Instead of providing this vague thing, you're going to provide all of these concrete deliverables. And now you can see how we got at the super concrete price. What did we do? We actually calculated the cost of scraping 10,000 high quality leads per month. This might have cost me $12. Okay, approximately. The internal cost of having somebody at my level offering a 45-minute weekly strategy session might be $500. So this is now $12 a month. This is $500 a month. Daily Slack availability, having somebody to manage and train their team 2 hours a day, that's 40 hours a month. Maybe I'm getting somebody at a reasonably low rate. I don't know. I can get that for $600 a month. And then maybe this monthly report costs me $50 a generate or something. If we add up all these costs, now you'll see that we're actually at a pretty reasonable price. This is 600 plus 500, that's 1,100. So that's going to be 1,162. Okay. And then if we take that into account, 3,770, we work the math out on 1,162, 3,770. We have just about a 70% margin, which is not as healthy as the 80% before, but hopefully you guys are seeing how all of these prices actually come to be. There's some internal cost, then you fix your margin, you multiply that out, and then you end up with the price that you make customer facing. And also, I'm not saying you have to charge everybody this price. You really don't, okay? You can start offering, let's say, a 10% discount or something like that to this service to make this, $3,300 or something. But the point is, you now have something to anchor. You're not just pulling numbers out of your ass every single time somebody asks you how much it's going to cost. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, had a lot of fun making it. To summarize, the difference between people who struggle to scale and those who consistently make 20, 50, or 75K a month isn't just technical skills. It's having systems that scale without requiring more of your time. Productization does this. It creates this leverage by transforming a vague service offering into a very concrete package, which eliminates scope creep. It also standardizes your processes and automates your delivery. The result is significantly more predictable income. It's much more consistency, and ultimately it's dramatically reduced workload, which I think we're all going for here. The most successful AI automation specialists don't implement this framework overnight. They start with one service, then they apply these 5 steps methodically, then they expand slowly once the systems are dialed in. So I'd recommend you do that as well. Lastly, if you guys are serious about scaling your AI agency, definitely consider checking out Maker School. It's my day-by-day accountability roadmap where I provide step-by-step guidance on how to implement this exact framework, as well as many others, with templates, scripts, and personalized feedback to help you guys get results faster. In addition to weekly community exclusives, you guys get support, access from me, and almost 3,000 other AI entrepreneurs growing together, as well as a whole host of other things. Check the link in the description. Aside from that, like, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff that bumps me to the top of the algo, and I'll catch you on the next video.